Good morning. Thanks for being with me and Leah today. So, for the second day in a row, we're waking up to scenes of violence in Belfast. Crowds once again taking to the streets, venting anger following Monday's knife attack.
Yeah, it's clear the calls for calm are going unheard, although last night's crowd numbers, they were smaller than yesterday. That said, police were still pelted with bricks, cars were set alight, and police had to use water cannons to repel protesters.
So in the last hour, the Northern Ireland Secretary has described what he said is racist thuggery. We've also heard from the family of the victim, the man who was stabbed, who's in hospital. They've spoken out expressing their disgust at what they're saying.
So let's just take a look at some of the clashes from last night. So rioters, they hurled bricks, rocks, bottles and petrol bombs at police, who responded with a water cannon, as we said, in a bid, I suppose, just to break up the crowds.
Cars were set on fire again. Demonstrators confronted police. I mean, I'm not sure we should be... I don't think they would... I'm going to say rioters. Rioters confronted police in the northwest of the city. They also tried to set another property on fire and lit small fires in wheelie bins as well.
Well, let's bring in our correspondent, Dan Whitehead, who's in Belfast. We set out the picture of what happened, Dan, overnight. Bring us up to date with what we're seeing this morning. And look, you're by that van that's been vandalised.
Yeah, this van was set alight last night by the thugs, and they pushed it into the wall here. And you can see not only is it dismantled, people were ripping off, these thugs were ripping off bricks on people's houses, people's walls, and throwing them at the police. Let's just come up here because we can have a chat with Paul Sharkey, who owns the house, who witnessed this last night. Paul, thanks so much for speaking to Sky News. I know it's torrential weather. Can you just describe to us what happened last night? You witnessed the van on fire smash into your property.
Yes, yeah, that was much later, but it all kicked off at 6:30 when the protesters met around at the supermarket and headed to the migrant hotel. The police pushed them back onto this road, and then the police formed a row of Land Rovers pushing the crowd back. You know, there was a lot of people here last night, and it was very, very frightening. Then that van was set alight and pushed down the road. There was nobody in it, and it crashed into my property. The water can was used to put the fire out in the van, but it was very, very terrifying. This is a residential area. Nobody around here would have expected to see what happened last night happen. If it happened here, it could happen anywhere.
You were inside your property. Can you just tell us how you were feeling when this van on fire smashed up, crashed into...
I was very frightened. I thought, oh my God, if that exploded, you know, because my car's there and I was worried about my property getting damaged. It was damaged because they took the pillar tops off and used them as weapons against the police.
Because we saw the rioters, as I say, smashing up walls, and they were making a mound of bricks, really a mound of ammunition to throw at police. What do you make of what happened on your street?
What can I say? It was just horrible. And there's elderly people living around here. That house was on fire over there. That was terrifying to see as well. A house going on fire. Why would you burn a house down? An empty house. OK, the house was empty, but still it was somebody's property, and it was very terrifying for the gentleman that owns it and for all of us around here.
And obviously next door to that house on fire, we'll take a look at that in a moment, is a petrol station. Yes. You were telling me that you obviously real concern.
We were concerned about the petrol station, but that was unaffected. I haven't been up to the petrol station to see, but the debris around here this morning, and this is a main arterial route into the city. This is a residential area, and nobody was expecting to see what happened last night happen.
What have your neighbours said to you? I mean, I presume you talked about the elderly gentleman. People must have been frightened for their lives.
Yeah. My neighbours up the road, they stood in front of their car in the driveway to protect their driveway because they didn't have gates on. And they stood in front of their car. It was horrific. I was concerned when I spoke to relatives and thinking, when it gets dark, what's going to happen here? But then the police started pushing them back, and then eventually they moved on. I don't know where they went.
And Paul, this was the second night of rioting, obviously after what happened on Monday night in the north of the city.
Yeah.
As a reaction, as a member of the community, what do you make of the reaction of a minority, clearly, this violent reaction?
There's no need to burn houses. There's no need. If you want to protest, do it peacefully. You know, yes, we were all shocked about what happened 2 nights ago here. Many things have happened in Belfast. That was one of the most horrific things. We weren't expecting that. And I can understand that people are frightened and concerned about going out in the street and whatnot, but this is a residential area. Nobody expected this to happen here last night. Absolutely.
Well, thanks so much for speaking to us. I'll let you get inside. I know you've got a clean-up operation to do. Let me just put my mic back on. And speaking of the clean-up operation, you can see that some of the vans have been trying to remove the debris. If we can, I don't know whether we'll try and cross the road if we can safely in a moment, just to get a bit further up to that house that was set on fire last night. As the water cannon were being used and pushing the crowd further up, a house, which was a derelict building, was actually set on fire. Let's see if we can just quickly cross the road safely. Hold on. See if we can bring it closer. You can see here the guys doing their best to do a clear-up operation here. Very difficult for the teams here, but there is the house which was set on fire. The roof completely gone from the top of it here. And this is the point where those water cannons were being used by the TSG, the Tactical Support Group from the PSNI. You know, those infamous Land Rover vehicles, the riot police pushing forward and trying to disperse the group. We heard Paul there talking about the fact that about a mile away from here is a hotel that has been used to house migrants. Some thoughts that is why this specific area of Belfast was targeted in the north last night. It's a very different situation last night than it was on Tuesday night when we had pockets of violence and fires right across the city. A very difficult situation for the police service to try and manage that because it was so dispersed and resources were stretched. Very concentrated last night, albeit a much smaller group of protesters, but very violent indeed. And I think Paul's words really reflect just how concerned the locals were last night in a peaceful residential area to witness outside your doors water cannons, fires on vans being rammed into your walls, bricks being thrown, you know, people's walls being ripped apart in front of their homes and thrown at police by people covering their face in balaclavas. Absolutely petrifying for the residents. And racist thuggery are the words we're hearing from politicians this morning. It is clear, potentially from the social media messages that are being circulated, that certain areas have been targeted. There's talk of addresses, HMOs that potentially are housing foreign nationals. There is clearly a theme now that there is a small, very small group of people who are intent on focusing on foreign nationals and racism being behind this, which is extremely worrying and, of course, not the situation that the politicians, the police and, of course, the vast community here in Belfast want to see. Let's just quickly move up a little bit closer before we hand back. The teams here continuing to do great work in clearing up. You can see the debris in the back here, parts of vehicles, the rocks, the charred remains. And if we just come up to this vehicle here, this small vehicle that was set on fire, the charred remains outside this house. This will be cleaned up. This will be removed within the next hour or so. The concern is, will there be a night 3?
OK, Dan, thanks for bringing us up to date on the ground there. It's really interesting, isn't it, just seeing those silent heroes who are picking up the pieces now, cleaning up those areas that were completely trashed, and rightly so, as you say, by rioters last night wanting to pick a fight. So what next, and what can the government do? Well, let's bring in our political correspondent, Rob Powell. The government have said, look, people were targeted here because of their race, because of the colour of their skin. What next? What can the government actually do to contain what might happen next? Yeah, there's always a balance for the government to strike in times like this, isn't there? I think back to 2 years ago when you had the riots after Southport, and you know, Hillary Benn this morning was pretty clear about how unacceptable some of the scenes have been. But the risk, I guess, in how do you condemn that while acknowledge some of the issues that are, I guess, are in part motivating it, whilst not conflating the two or legitimising the violence. I think for the government, there's a reassurance job going on around
the way that this suspect entered the UK. Obviously across, we think, the border between Republic of Ireland and Northern Ireland. They are saying that they're putting a lot more into immigration enforcement in Northern Ireland. There's no suggestion of, the border being hardened or checks coming in there. I think that would be politically just completely impossible to do. But they are talking about beefing up operations around seaports and airports on the island of Ireland to try and combat illegal migration there. And then, of course, there is the language around telling people that they will feel the full force of the law if they engage in it. And I thought Hillary Benn, when he spoke to you a bit earlier, was pretty firm on it all. Have a listen.
Are these racist riots rather than protests?
Well, if you are targeting people on the basis of their colour of their skin, how else can you describe them? That is racist thuggery. There's no question about it at all. Because we are a society where, as Martin Luther King famously said, we should judge people by the content of their character and not by the colour of their skin. And these are people who have come to Northern Ireland, settled. Someone was forced out of their home. They've been living here for 20 years. And they're working in the health service, they're working in industry, they are colleagues and friends of people who were born and brought up in Northern Ireland. And there is no place for this whatsoever.
I feel like, language does matter here, actually. At a point when people are setting fire to houses, targeting people because of the colour of their skin, that's not a protest anymore. I put that to Sir Mark Rowley. We had the Met Police Commissioner on the programme as well. Should very much say and stress it's not his pet patch, but there are questions around policing, so it's an interesting response.
I was watching a bit of news last night, and I can't remember what channel it was, but a journalist talking about these protesters. I thought, that isn't protest. That isn't protest. People are setting fire to cars. That's not protest. That's violent disorder. That's criminality. I really feel for the Police Service Northern Ireland colleagues who are sort of wrestling with that. It's really, really difficult. We live in these volatile times, and some of what goes on online whips up sentiment on the street, doesn't it?
That point's quite interesting about what's happening online, whipping up sentiment on the street.
Yeah, Ofcom, the media regulator, has spoken to social media platforms and told them they basically have to have a plan in place to make sure that they can quickly take down illegal content before it is able to spread. Liz Kendall, the Science Secretary, said next week they'll table an amendment to change to the Online Safety Act as well to do a similar thing, to toughen up the speed of the approach. Because I guess the problem is that when things are moving so quickly, if you have a sort of legislative and judicial framework that means that a month down the line, or weeks down the line, days down the line even, action is taken to take down posts, well, that's too late when things move at this pace. The difficulty is, though, is where you draw the line, right? Like, the provisions in the Online Safety Act already tackle illegal content. You can have an argument about how rapidly they're enforced, but clearly I can't see how that would apply to people organising a legitimate protest that then on the ground turns violent. When Hillary Benn there was talking about how it would be illegal clearly for people to be spreading the door numbers of suspected people that they think are from ethnic minorities, you can see how very clearly that would cross the line. But just publicising something that had gone on, like that horrendous video in Belfast, and organising a protest, it's not clear to me how social media companies or the government would act to restrain that snowballing into something on the streets that turned more malicious.
Look, there's so many questions, there really are. Before we move on, we also asked the Met Police Commissioner about potential cuts to his frontline services. And this is after the London Mayor Sadiq Khan blocked an AI tech deal that he wanted to drive through for efficiencies. This is quite something. Just listen to this.
5,700 officers and staff who, part of delivering services to London, maybe from call handling through to street policing, we're going to have to be reducing that. That will have an effect on the streets of London. That's why we're trying to do a sort of rapid tech procurement to make a difference for Londoners.
Will it make London less safe? Is that what you're saying?
Well, we're going to be smaller at the end of the year, so it'll be less safe at the end of the year than it would otherwise have been.
So that's the kind of Palantir deal that he's talking about there, blocked by the London Met.
Yeah, just reflecting, I think, if we can, actually, because we were just saying how the scenes from Belfast that we've been seeing over the last few days, actually, it has such a toll, doesn't it? And you circle back to Monday and the victim and the brutality of that, medieval in many ways. And then you think of, like, the 7-year-old who was, you know, evacuated from their home with their parents, not sure about the safety in somewhere that was meant to be your home. It's a lot to take on, isn't it? And it's OK if you find those scenes really quite terrifying.
Yeah, this is it. Terrifying, and also just kind of, like we were just saying, I think it takes a little while to sink in, like reporting it on the news like this, just to the enormity of what we're seeing. I read an interview with 2 care workers who were in their house, in the flames. The police were like, we can't get out, we can't get you out, you have to stay there. One of them fainted and passed out. And it was only like a local vicar, actually, who managed to somehow talk to the people outside to get them to pause, to allow these 2 women to escape. I mean, how is that meant to make you feel in your home? It's absolutely... Well, it's just it's unspeakable, really.